Hey, good evening, everyone. John Henry Soda here, along with George Batista. Welcome to Counterparts. Very excited. We have some amazing talent here tonight. Holy cow, I can't wait to bring her on. Camila Meza is going to be here. Hang on tight because you're going to love this. Alrighty, welcome everyone. And I say you're gonna love this, and I really mean that because I've been listening to her music like all day. I was cooking in the kitchen and I had it on. It was just so there's so much flavor in it, and I just have a lot of questions for her, as George does as well. So let's just bring her on, ladies and gentlemen. Please. Oh, you want to actually read something, George?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about her first before we bring her on. So Camila Meza.
I'm too anxious.
Yes, I know you are. Calm down, John. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. So Camila Meza is a Chilean jazz guitarist, singer, and songwriter. She was musically inspired by jazz guitarists like George Benson and Pat Metheny, as well as being influenced by South American music and folk. In 2009, Meza moved to New York to study guitar at the New School and eventually found work in the New York jazz scene. She has recorded many albums, including 2016 album called Traces, which won 2 Independent Music Awards as the Best Adult Contemporary Album and Best Latin Song para Volar. Her most recent album is called Ambar, which was released in 2019. And John, let's bring her up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Camila Meza.
Woo! Yes.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if you're hearing this crazy rain. Are you?
Yeah, we hear the rain, but it's exciting.
It is. It is exciting. It's a great thing for where I am right now. So
good.
I hope it just doesn't bother so much the audience.
No, I think it's good. I think we can hear you clearly, so that's good. Want to thank you for being on. We really appreciate your time being here with us. Like I said earlier, I was listening to your music today. I was making some food for my kids, and it was such a wonderful blend of so many different things that I love. There was a jazz element. There was this Latin flavor to it, but there was this a folkness to it as well, like storytelling. And I just love that mix of the combination. My first question for you is, with that wonderful blend of music, was it difficult for you to kind of find your voice, bringing all those together? Because it seems like it's so you. But it's got this wonderful blend of wonderful things.
Well, thank you so much for noticing that, because there was definitely a search, and if you hear my earlier albums, you can see the sort of like quote unquote progression to get to what you're talking about, that sort of the perfect blend of all those influences,
Yeah.
And I feel that what I can say about that process is that it took a lot of like kind of sitting with myself and soul search,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like really be like, hold on, am I doing this way because I want to do it this way, or because I feel that people are expecting me to do it this way?
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, and that honestly, it does take a moment of courage to be like, okay, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for what my soul is saying, and if people don't like it, then I gotta stay true to myself. That's what's gonna make me the happiest, and eventually it really does pay off, because you end up finding your niche, like the people that really can experience your music in the most honest way and are not expecting anything else than for you to be yourself,
Right. Yeah, and it definitely does take some soul searching, because like you said, sometimes you're kind of wondering, like, is this me, or is this what I think people think I should be, or because I like all this stuff, then
Definitely.
it's a sort of it's just assumed or something.
Right.
But yeah, you sit there and you take that chance, and I think I'm so glad you did, because it's just wonderful music. We just love it. We love it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
George and I are musicians, so, and we played in bands and we recorded records and played all over the place. And so, when you hear real music, it's like, it makes my, our hairs stand. So it's awesome.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting because I had found you. I had seen a video of you on YouTube, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I was like, this girl could play. I mean, so I started just watching your videos, and then I immediately said, she would be perfect to bring on the show, because I want to learn about her. I want to learn about her background. It's funny that I contacted John, and I said, and I think I sent the video to you, John, and
yeah.
I said, have you seen it? He goes, oh yeah, I follow her.
Yeah,
and it just so happened that it worked out that
nice.
way. Yeah, so it was great. So absolutely. Now, so as far as your musical background, did you come from a musical family? Was music encouraged in your home?
I would say so, because my dad studied music, in college. He was a pianist and composer. And all my siblings picked an instrument,
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
What I think I did differently is that I actually sort of continued, pursuing the career.
Right.
Because I feel like my dad kind of like got discouraged midway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I consider him a musician regardless,
Sure. Right. Sure.
But he had his fears of like whether the classic fears of whether you can live off of this and
right.
And so, yeah, we are definitely a musical family. We're singing all the time together and creating songs about little things, mundane things.
Yeah,
it's super fun. Always super fun.
I love it. And you mentioned those concerns that a lot of musicians have, and that's such a huge challenge. And one of the reasons why George and I want to actually showcase artists and great artists are because you have the story, you have the journey, and you have a path that someone could. Everyone's path is different, but you can show someone how you navigated, and that really does inspire someone. Did you ever reach that moment where you felt, that kind of concern where you weren't sure, but you decided to just keep plugging along?
Definitely. I feel like we all will go through those moments of uncertainty and kind of questioning whether you did the right thing and you chose the correct endeavor to sustain yourself.
Right.
Also because I have to say that for me it was very hard to play music that I didn't truly felt, that like I was digging it. I know that as musicians we have to do everything,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a period of our life that like we literally don't say no to any gig.
Right.
And that was
Yes.
that was
Yes.
really hard.
Yes.
At one moment I consciously said, okay, you know what, I chose this path because it fulfills me at a spiritual level almost, not almost, definitely at a spiritual level. So there were moments where I had to make like really hard decisions of like, I guess I'll have to let go of this very like tempting pay because I'm not going to enjoy this gig, and I'm not in this road for this, but it was gradual, like I would never recommend like a student that's starting to like just
Right.
immediately like, because you learn from every experience at the end.
Sure. Yeah, I think that one thing that you said that strikes me is that again you were kind of detached from the outcome. You just did it because this is what you love to do, and you had to do it, and whatever happens happens. And again, and like what John said as well, is that not everybody goes down that path, because you sometimes that your mind stops you and says, no, maybe not, but you just let it flow. And you said, and I think probably that's a big part of your success, is that it's just the mindset of just saying, I'm going to do it no matter what. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is that I'm going to do it the best of the best I can.
Right.
On every situation, because that whole that cliche phrase that they say, you never know who's in the audience.
Right.
It's absolutely true. I mean, being in New York, making music in little bars and like little restaurants and stuff, all that those experiences really built my audience. It built me to play in like bigger spaces. It built me to be in a situation where, like, let's say my manager was in the audience, my current manager, or my producer, or like some of the musicians that I was going to end up playing for years and tour with them, So
wow.
I would say that definitely, that taking every little moment, every music performance as seriously, not in the bad way, but like as full as you can to be the best version of yourself. That's definitely my motto.
Nice.
Yeah, like to really put the attention on your passion, like 24/7. This is like, and you're so right about that, taking those gigs, because you may take a gig that you're like, okay, this is really not gonna fulfill me. But if you do decide to take it, then all bets are off. You got to give it everything everything you got, because again, you never know who's in the audience. And New York City is that kind of a city where who knows who's out there. Your next opportunity may be right there sitting in front of you.
Definitely. I mean, and also for your audience that that are musicians and live somewhere else. Honestly, today you have like someone recording on a phone, like from
exactly.
So
put it on YouTube.
You can escape,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's true. Is that something like the social media and the filming and is that something that you really pay a lot of attention to as well, on a business level?
Well, I'm part of a generation that sort of like grew up with no social media, and then like
everything
it took over, everything.
Right.
So I've had to really like adjust on every little step that this monster, I would call it, evolves, because also honestly it changes like by the year. You have something else that you need to eventually get better at in that realm, but I consider it important in the sense that it's a tool. It's a tool for us to be able to connect with other people, which is definitely a big part of our job, And I do remember my early years in New York. Of course, those years, I mean, at least for me, like I didn't have any support of like any big institution or label or anything. So it was just very DIY and like being able to make a little event on Facebook and invite the few people that had shown interest on my restaurant gig and tell them like, I'll be playing on this other bar, and then slowly build like that. I thought, I was using the tool in a good way. I don't like to overuse it, because we all know that like social media can get like really tiring. So so that
I actually work in social media, so I know that it's like get to a little
but this is great. You see, like what you guys are doing is definitely one of the bright things of this whole world.
Thank you. And you're right, because I think when you use social media as a tool and you use it to connect with others, that is what it's. I mean, it's social media, right? It's social, so it's socializing. It's not about politics. It's not about your favorite team or anything like that. It's about connecting with others on a spiritual level, on a musical level, and really making sure that when the day goes on, when you're having something going on, that you can actually invite them and bring them in, because now you have this connection. I have friends that I've never met in person that I've known for like 10 years. I'm like,
Right.
how do I know you for 10 years?
No,
I've never
there's-
even, it's crazy,
There's crazy stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of artists don't really go that route. They feel like that's another thing. They don't want to focus on it, which I kind of understand, because it's not really their passion, but it's something that's almost like a necessity at this point, just to kind of, gain a nice little following,
Yeah. It does
Yeah.
take a special skill too, Like
Yeah.
I don't blame people that like feel really
know, I don't blame
awkward.
you. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I always say, you
Yeah.
can't do it, hire somebody.
Right.
Hire
True.
somebody to do
True.
it,
Yeah, like basically try to use it, in your own personal way. You don't have to be anything you don't
Right.
want. You don't you don't have to pretend to be like this influencer or whatever.
Right.
Just
Like your favorite.
just use it in your own way, and you'll attract the people that will support your art.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
How was that the decision to come to New York? Because New York is such an intimidating place for whether it's actors or musicians or whatever. So, the decision that you made, how did you come to it? And also, did you have support when did family support you in that decision?
Yeah, well, I wasn't necessarily thinking of moving to New York when I went there the first time.
Mhm.
I'm not in New York now, that's why I say there.
Okay.
But like I remember I spent like a month, and it was summer, so there was like this whole like the outdoor festivals,
Right.
like all
Yeah.
this
Yes.
beautiful, amazing creative spirit, bursting everywhere. And I remember, I was walking on Central Park after, like an amazing concert, and then going to the museum or something. I was like, oh my God, I have to come here and like live here, because it's just making me so like, like it was like this energy that.
Yes.
So I was, I was performing a lot in Chile actually, but like I already had felt that, I wanted like a new horizon vibe.
Okay.
And so once I came back to Chile, I applied for a school, one of the schools that I had, seen during that visit, and said like, oh, that would be amazing. And that combination also of going there and land in a school with peers and people that are in my same vibe, that was like, for me, the conclusion of that trip is that I want to do that. So
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thunder.
Yeah. I was hoping that you heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good ending there when you said that whole
It
excitement.
was so much energy.
You can hear New York from where you are.
Yeah. My parents, as I told you, my dad was a little reticent of me following this whole thing, but like I had already shown, quote unquote, in Chile that like there was a prospect future for me in the music. And so when I applied to school, and then they also learned that like I was given a scholarship, not a full scholarship, but like enough so that like I could afford it. They were excited because
good.
New York, it's definitely the land of the possibilities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, they were excited and they supported me. And
Great.
Yeah.
That's so good.
All right. So what is it about what is it about like jazz or that style that attracts you? I'm a jazz lover, by the way. I love, I'm very inspired by same folks like George Benson, Pat Metheny, Lee Ritenour, those type of folks. I love, I listen to that a lot. But what is it about that music that does it for you?
Yeah, well, also going back to like the early years of me getting, like getting this music into my ears and not really understanding anything of how it worked. Or
Right.
I remember something really funny because I loved listening to Metheny, but then, for instance, I never knew that he was improvising. I thought that he was just like going through these learned parts,
Right.
and it sounded so amazing. And then when I realized that it was all created in the moment, like it blew my mind.
Yeah,
Like
I had the same reaction actually.
yeah, it's
I had the same, I was
crazy.
like, wait, what?
Yeah, like it blew my mind, and I was like, all right. I mean, I wanted to sound like that, and now this, knowing that this is also created in the moment, it fits so much like my personality, because by that time I was playing like in rock bands and like some funk soul, but we were playing everything very honestly like the same every gig.
Right.
And I remember having that feeling without even knowing so much about jazz, but like, oh, there's, I wish there was like a style of music or like a way to, go every gig and make it a little different, or like make it risky here and communicate here. So all these things finally I found in jazz. And I also, I was kind of geeky from the beginning, so I loved like studying and learning and so jazz also gave me that endless ocean of
language
discovery. That like literally you can wake up every day of your life and have something to learn when you're studying this music.
And it's interesting because that is kind of what attracts me to it as well. It's that part that every gig can be different. There's a lot of improvisation, but it's also one of the things I have respect for the total respect for it is the musicianship itself. These
Definitely.
these music like yourself and some of these players that are just amazing musicians, and you have to be at a certain level in order to play all these the way these these complicated pieces that they play, and that attracts me. Not that, I mean, John and I played rock and we played alternative rock and stuff, and I love that too. But jazz is a different thing. There's a different mindset to it.
It's a language.
Yeah. And actually, I definitely consider it that way too, because as you were mentioning, like when you hear my music, you're like, oh, I don't know where to put this, where to classify it.
Right.
But my approach, I feel like it has always been from that perspective, like even if it's like a folky tune, like if you go hear me, one day in like at a show, and then you go like at a month later, you hear like a total different version of it,
Right.
And a different solo and so that's what I really love about it.
I mean, that's what I love too. And I remember when I was a kid, I Jose Feliciano. So when I was a kid, he was always like on TV with my grandparents watching shows, and I remember he came on and he did a song. He did this solo. I didn't know what a solo was. I didn't know what he was doing, but I was blown away by that. And then later on, as I got a little older, I realized that he just was playing whatever he felt. And that just blew my mind. I was like, wait, you can just, how do you know though? Where do and it's like, well, you learn the scale, you learn everything, and then you forget it, and then you just play. And that was like, wow, that just blew me away. So I love the jazz. I wanted to ask you about you have a song called This Is Not America, which is one of the best songs I've ever heard. It was like, George, I don't know if you played that one yet, but to me it's almost like a musical. It's almost like a whole story. It's like a whole theme of it's hard to explain, but remember, the Tommy from the Who?
The Who Tommy.
They took the music and you can make a whole musical off of that piece of music, in my opinion. Because I was listening, I was in the kitchen, and I was like, damn, I had to stop. Like, this is like really intense.
Very definitely intense. That's the word.
What inspired that?
Yeah, well, that song came towards the end of producing my album Ambar, my last album with the Nectar Orchestra. And during that time, there was a lot of like turmoil. That's how you say.
Mhm.
Yeah, like social unrest. I mean,
Yeah,
there
yeah.
still is, but like,
Mhm.
but there was so much going on that I hadn't experienced living in America, and a lot of, I was feeling, that it was impossible to turn an, how you say, turn an eye, no, like
Turn a
dismiss
blind eye. Turn a
a blind
blind
eye.
eye.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
To like the social,
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
the social movements and the social phenomena that was happening.
Mhm.
And as an immigrant around that time, and it felt very personal at moments too,
Yeah.
like so yeah, we were like almost finishing, like compiling the songs and arranging, and then I was, oh yeah, a lot of things intertwined here, because I was actually looking into making an arrangement of a Pat Metheny song. Like that was one of my
Mhm.
my wishes, and I was going through the repertoire, and my friend Noam, who's the bass player and arranger, string arrangement arranger, he said like, "Hey, what about this?" And he sends me this song, which basically it's in the soundtrack of oh my god, I'm spacing out. That's David Bowie, Lyle Mays, and Pat Metheny wrote the soundtrack for the Falcon and
Oh,
my
yeah,
god,
yeah.
1985 movie.
Yes, yes.
And it's I listened to it and I was like, okay, this is because it was like a very 90s kind of arrangement of the song, but I immediately was able to like
Extract
it and say like, okay, the message is really hitting me, and this melody, I can make it mine, like with this band and with this arrangement, we're gonna make something very powerful that is relevant today.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what when I was listening to it, it's so relevant now, and it's so visual. It's such a visual song.
Right, because also like we definitely composed this arrangement to have like almost like a cinematic effect.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and for the people that have listened to it, basically, yeah, you go through the whole story, and then at the end, like the guitar solo sort of like
it just
takes over,
takes
and
over.
it
It's
feels
like
like a
flying.
catharsis, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's flying, really. I mean, I've heard, that's how I feel when I'm guitar soloing. It feels like you're flying, and sometimes you don't realize when you took off. You don't realize when you took off, and then you realize, oh wait, I got to come down at some point.
I know, right?
you're just going, but it's a wonderful piece.
It was so, I mean, it still is, but like that song in particular makes me have amazing memories of like the moments that we played them live in America, because honestly, during the time there was always something to like want to express, or so every time that we would finish that solo, and it finishes very dramatically and very like boom,
Right.
like people would go nuts.
Wow.
Like they would like stand up and like like almost like they went through a change.
That change. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a song and an arrangement that I'm really fond of because of that. Yeah.
And you brought in in that album, you brought in an orchestra where you've normally had a smaller group.
Right.
So talk about the thought process behind bringing the whole orchestra in there.
I'm trying to put a little bit of light because I'm getting like very dark here.
That's okay.
Well done. Is this better?
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
there you are.
I'm so prepared.
Yeah.
Well, this project actually it's relatively an old project. that we started with Noam Weisenberg, the string arranger. We started this project like in 2012 or something. So like I was having like this sort of like parallel projects going on, you know, like my quartet that I was like playing a lot and touring. And this project on the side, we were doing some gigs in New York, but it was kind of like on and off because sometimes I was too busy with my quartet. But then once I was done with my album Traces, which is the previous to Ambar, I finally had the time to really focus on, you know, all these songs that we had been working on together. And yeah, it was amazing because basically it was a vision, like a collective vision between Noam and myself, and this group of friends, to be honest. Like, you know, the band of Nectar Orchestra is, you know, it's like really close friends, and when we go on tour, it's always like so much fun. We crack up all the time. And the string part was basically like kind of like a mutual interest between Noam and myself. I really wanted to sing with strings, and he wanted to arrange for strings for a long time. So it was very synchronic, you know, what was going on. And it started mostly as an experiment. We weren't thinking of like, okay, we're going to record and we're going to go on tour. No, it was very kind of like a musical experimentation, you know, just like, let's try some songs. But it ended up sounding so cool that we're like, okay, let's go for it.
Keep going.
Yeah.
I think that's always one of the best ways of doing it, where I think because if you have like, okay, this is what it has to be, then the pressure is on, and then maybe it's not as free as you wanted it to be. But this seemed like it was just, and it felt that way, very free,
super organic. Yeah,
very organic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you have an idea for like a overall album message of, you know, like a theme or something that you had overall with the album?
Yeah, it sort of unfolded itself, because same thing, kind of like we were just following, oh, we love this song, and then, you know, like the repertoire ended up leading us to this, or me, you know, as a writer, through this you know, this journey that had a lot to do with a beginning episode of healing through music, you know. That actually the name of the album is the name of the song that ignited that whole, you know, concept finally, which is a song that I wrote for my grandfather when he passed. And it's a song that I wrote my first year in New York. I wasn't able to go back to Chile, you know, to spend the time and the, you know, like that moment of ceremony and introspection with your family. I wasn't able to do that. So in sort of like a very intuitive way, I delve myself into music so that I could have that, even if I was by myself, you know. So I wrote a song as a farewell, but also as a kind of like a perpetual connection to my grandfather, who I was like very close to, you know. And he was so happy that I was going to New York. I remember the last time I saw him, he kept basically saying how proud he was about, like, for me, and that he knew I was going to do great things. So yeah, I basically wrote that song to him, and it really opened up that whole realm for me of like music, as like music has this therapeutic almost.
Yes,
effect,
definitely.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, That's how a lot of songs came about and became part of this whole album, you know.
Yeah, grandparents are such at another level of support. It's like my grandparents raised me pretty much. They
Yeah.
pretty much did. So my grandfather was the first guy who said, ven acá. He took me down, went to the music store. He's like, ¿cuál te gusta? And I was like, so
Where
I
is
didn't
he
know.
from?
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. And but I didn't know he was buying me a guitar. I was, I think, 9 years old or something. And he pointed to, but they put it in a box, and a guy came home with it, and I was like, wow. I had uncles that played and everything, but that support, it's not matched by any, even parents sometimes, because I think parents are so connected that they they're so connected, where parents have that kind of like middle ground where they have that other that other area in the middle that they're like, no, they're going to do great things. I'm going to support them 100%. And it's just this wonderful love that it's different. It's just different, but
Absolutely.
it's wonderful.
Yeah. And for you, like that moment of your grandpa buying the guitar, that kind of
Yeah,
changed your life, no?
it did. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
here talking about it now, all these years later.
Wow, that's so
Not that many
beautiful.
years later, but no, just kidding. Many years later. No, but
Absolutely.
yeah, George.
Yeah. So, talk about your songwriting now. Were you writing songs when you were younger, or did you just kind of write them as they went along?
I started writing songs very early on.
Very young. Okay.
Yeah, actually, without even knowing what the names of the chords were.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. I was always like creating little bands, to play
Yeah.
these original songs, and so it's always been very natural. But I have to say that there was a moment where I had like some kind of writer's block or something,
Sure.
where I started learning kind of in an academic way, and I started getting super self-conscious of like, is this good enough, or is all that
Yeah.
stuff that I imagine it's common, but it lasted for a long time. So like there was a period of time, I would say maybe 7 years, where I wrote, I don't know, 4 songs.
Wow.
And then it was almost like as a volcano, because once I actually finished school, I went through this crazy, almost like an existential crisis, where like you start questioning everything, everything in your life. And that whole process was amazing for songwriting, because
Sure.
I started putting all those emotions and all those questionings and experiences and frustrations and or all this, the good stuff too, I started putting them on songs. And finally I was able to go back to that essence that I think it was totally part of who I am as a musician.
Yeah.
So yeah, like my process was like very kind of like ups and downs, but like now I feel very connected to that part of myself, and I feel like I'm always, there's always something. I'm always writing something, even if I'm slow. There's times where like it's a little more like drought-like, but there's still something going on.
Do you do the just all the writing first, or do you do the guitar first, or is it just a combination of things?
Yeah, I have like 15.
Frozen. Lost her.
There, I'm back.
Okay, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
I'll be back for a second.
Again. All right.
Okay, now I hear you.
There you are.
Okay.
Sorry. So I would say that the most common of my methods, it comes a lot from like the improvisatory aspect of my musicianship. And a lot of times it actually has to do with like me feeling a certain way that it's hard to put into words, or it's hard to express, or maybe it's something that I have unresolved with even someone else, and then I just sit down and kind of like improvise, and some songs come out of that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I call it like this rinsing, emotional rinse.
Right. Sure. You mentioned that you were in school, and after you got out of school, something happened, like you had a volcano. It's interesting that you said that, because school is very interesting. I mean, it's good for a lot of things, but I feel sometimes that it becomes structured, and because it's structured and you're not necessarily criticized in a bad way, but you are reviewing your material, and but you have this structured kind of thing, so it's very difficult to live and to write. As soon as you left school, now you can live, right? You have to live to write, right? You have to live life. You have to experience things in order to be able to know what to write. And it seems like right after you left school, you were able to do that with the knowledge you got from school. You had the technical part of it, but the emotional part came after living.
Yeah. Well, for me also had to do with being able to determine like, what do you really like, because in school you're sort of like fed.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
You're fed what teachers think that you should be nurturing yourself with,
Right.
which is great too. Like you find new things that probably you wouldn't find yourself, and you explore and everything. But is this too loud?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. But then when you're all by yourself, now you're like really in that creative space where you have to really listen to yourself.
Right.
And what we were talking about, like that whole thing of like, do I really like this, or what do I want to write about? And that makes your music deeper, instead of just keep playing the things that someone told you to play. You're like, all right, what do I want to write about, or how do I want this music to sound? And that's when your songwriting becomes better and more personal too, and you start writing meaningful things that you care about, and therefore people will care about them too.
Right, exactly. Can't believe we're like at already 42 minutes.
Wow.
Boom. I wanted to ask you, because like I told you earlier, we have this show because we really want to spotlight artists, to help other artists and just people in general really on their journey as well. What's something that you do when you're kind of like not feeling at your best, or you're kind of going through something? What's something that you do to kind of get yourself out of that, maybe for songwriting or for just anything in life in general?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I mean, I imagine that everybody during these last 2 years, all musicians like went through a little bit of like, what is going on?
Right, exactly.
A lot of that.
Everybody really had to like pull their inner motivation out.
Yeah.
So part of it, I think, for me, is to reconnect with the music that I love, that kind of like, made me make music in the first place, and go into that space to gonna kind of like rebuild myself from there, in a more concrete way. For instance, like the other day, I was re-listening to an album by a guitar player that I love, and I remember like loving a specific solo, of this guitar player, and then I kept singing it, and I was like, oh, I never really learned it on the guitar. I kept like, I knew it in my mind, and I was like, what if I like try to play it? And it was really hard, and it kind of like put me in that like challenging but very motivational mode. And I did it every day, and I was like, it felt like being like a 15-year-old Camila again,
Right.
So like That's when it comes to like, studying, kind of like go back to those things that you love. And
Sure.
but then writing and keep creating music, um, mainly for me, sometimes it has to do with like maybe creating projects for myself, like for instance, I am interested in developing like more like the solo sound of the guitar, but with like maybe some synths or things like that. So
Okay.
it's like, try to dive into different worlds and try to create new things that you haven't explored so much.
Like Alan Holdsworth kind of a stuff.
Yes.
Well, actually, what I was thinking more like, I was obsessed at one point with this Sufjan Stevens album called Carrie and Lowell.
Okay.
And yeah, very very different, but like, but that idea of like some like folky song with like, all these beautiful colors. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. Well, what's your opinion of? And I mean, this is a hard question. I don't even know why I'm asking it, but the music industry today, how do you navigate? Like, how do you navigate it? What are your thoughts on it? Really, like, what's currently happening? I mean, I know it's kind of a loaded question, but
yeah, it's loaded, and also it's interesting because it also has like so many angles,
Right.
Part of me kind of thinks that it is the easiest and the hardest time to be a musician.
It's a good point.
You're right.
You're right.
Yeah. Like, you have so many possibilities to put your music out there, but that at the same time brings like the incredible amount of like of information that like you can get lost in it,
Right.
I mean, I see it also how like, today the people that are out there are not necessarily the people that are signed by those big labels, and like it has changed a lot.
Right.
Back in the day, maybe if you were part of like, Universal, then you make it. But today you can be absolutely independent.
Right.
But if you have, this charisma or this presence that like grabs people attention on social media, then you can like, know.
Yeah,
so it's
I mean, it's an interesting thing because we talk about it here a lot, obviously, but it's a lot of record companies are getting artists from TikTok, and they're looking at, which is sort of like, whatever, 60 seconds through, 3 minute little, and they have the charisma, or they have something. They may not be the most talented, but they have something that the industry, or at least that part of the industry, thinks that is they can crank out and make a quick buck. Unfortunately, George and I talk about how 70% of all music that streams right now on Spotify and most platforms are actually old music. So,
oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, there's an article actually. If you want, I could send you an article that I think you'll.
Please do.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. And it goes over basically the statistics of what's actually happening in the music industry. So a lot of people are not listening, and I'm talking about the young people are not listening to the new stuff. The new stuff comes and goes, but the real solid stuff is the stuff that's classic. People are still listening to the Beatles. They're still listening to Billy Joel. They're still listening to all the Eagles. And that takes up 70% of the streaming that's going on right now. So that kind of like, to me, gives me hope in a sense, because it shows that there is still a need for good music. There's artists like you that are putting out great music out there that people can actually, we have to find it a little bit more, kind of like what George and I have to do, to dig a little bit more to find good music. But once we find it, we know it's there. And I think that that's a really important thing to really think about, moving forward in this crazy industry.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, part of me also would like to see, a change in the way that these huge platforms, like the streaming platforms, treat us, because
Yeah.
like I feel that we're not. It's hard to think that we're going to change the way that we listen to music because it's so comfortable. It's like you have everything. Like
Yeah.
the idea of going back to CDs and not streaming. It's
Record.
not really realistic.
Right.
But the way that these streaming platforms really share the revenue, that's what should be reconsidered.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, and sorry, George, this is my last point. I know
right.
you know how I talk a lot, but I think the future does look good when you look at and the NFT space, the blockchain. There's a lot of ways that an artist can actually control every single piece of content that they put out, and it doesn't have to go through a third party. Like right now, for instance, we're using Facebook. We're on Facebook now. We're on Instagram. I'm on TikTok over here. That we're using these platforms and there's third parties. But when you're on the blockchain for music, you own all of that chain where no one else can get in there. So you can go directly to your consumer. So there's a lot more that you can actually, that's coming. But now is the time to really get educated on that. And I've done a lot of it research myself just to kind of like figure out, well, what's the next 15 years going to be like? You know what I mean? I still plan to be here, you know what I mean? But it's going to be a huge change.
Yeah.
It's going to be a huge change. So it is going to be different, but you're right. The streaming channels right now don't give enough respect to the ones that are basically feeding the system, so that's got to change.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing though that it's something cool that we're witnessing right now is that even if we have it really hard to play live music will always be.
That's it.
That's
what I always go back to that, because when all this technology goes away,
exactly.
Where are they going to go? You have to go find people that actually have the talent to go play, to go listen to music the way it was 100 years ago.
Exactly.
And that is never going to go away.
Yeah.
That's what we have to remember. So everybody keep playing out there and keep practicing and keep studying.
Absolutely.
Keep the music alive. This has been such a joy to have you on here. I mean, it's such a wonderful experience. And again, we love your music, and we would love to have you come back anytime you want.
If there's a new album, if you have a new project coming out, we'll definitely have you back and talk about it.
That would be amazing.
Absolutely. Yes, we would love it. And if you're coming to the States, I don't know if you're in the States now, but if you're anywhere, I'm in Nashville.
And I'm in New York. I'm in New York.
So. George is in New York. So any of those places, you're always welcome there. We'd love to see some of your music live.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's coming for sure. So I'll let you guys know.
Awesome. Absolutely. I want to just show your website here, so you can get some information. Do you have any final words to say to your audience, or to our audience?
Well, mostly that I'm really thankful for you guys and these spaces to connect and talk about music and kind of dive deep into what we do. So, and hopefully people, if they don't know my music, they can also, check something new and hopefully enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Actually, just don't go away yet. Just hang on tight for 1 second. We're just gonna, and thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow. She's awesome.
Yeah.
That is exactly what, she can hang tight for 1 second, and we'll be right back with her in 10 seconds.
Very inspirational conversation.
And the fact that she's so well educated in music and probably knows a ton more, and we only had like this time with her, but she probably could just teach us so much, and she's just a great spirit. So we really appreciate her being on. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm John Henry Soto for George Batista and Counterparts. We'll see you all next week. I'm still here next week, right? Because I know I'm going away.
Yes, you are.
I'm still here. So I'll see you all next week. Take care of yourselves. And as always, peace.